Walters is the spot to be before and after opening day this upcoming Friday afternoon. Walters is located just across the street from the ballpark, right off South Capitol Street.
Runner at first goes, swinging a drive by Abrams, deep right center field. Way back goes the right fielder Garcia, looking up, and it is caught. Goodbye! Bang! Zoom goes C.J. Abrams. That's his first home run of the year. Bang! Zoom goes Abrams. A 3-run home run here in the top of the 7th inning. And the Nationals have a 4-run cushion. It's Washington 5 and Philadelphia 1.
Sosa digs back in. Henry sets at the belt. The 0-2 pitch. Swinging a line drive left field, base hit. Turner scores. Coming home is Moore. Woods' throw to the plate is too high and goes to the backstop. Henry's got to back up to play. Bohm goes to third. Sosa to second. The game is tied.
House is in the cutout at third. Garcia just to the left of the cutout at first. Now the pitch. He shows no bunt and swings and grounds it past the diving Nunez into right center field. A base hit. That scores Marsh, and the Phillies have won it. And they're out of the dugout to mob the 22-year-old rookie Justin Crawford, who has his first walk-off hit in the major leagues.
And welcome to Nats Chat, along with Washington Nationals insider Mark Zuckerman of NatsJournal.com. I'm Al Galdi, host of the Al Galdi podcast. Mark is at Citizens Bank Park, where the Nats have fallen to 3-3 in MLB's 2026 regular season. A 6-5, 10-inning loss at the Philadelphia Phillies on Wednesday afternoon, in a game in which the Nats blew a 5-1 7th-inning lead. The Nats end up losing 2 out of 3 games in the series. Now, bigger picture, the Nats, who of course have restarted a rebuild, are 3-3, despite the first 6 games all being on the road and coming over 2 series against 2 win-now teams in the Chicago Cubs and Philadelphia Phillies. And each of the Nats' last 2 losses has been by just 1 run. If you're a Nats fan, you probably would have signed up for that, right? Like you probably would have signed that piece of paper going into opening day. So we offer some perspective to begin this installment of the podcast. But there's no doubt that this loss on Wednesday afternoon was rough. 5 Nats relievers combined to allow 5 runs, 4 earned in 3 innings. Each of the 5 relievers used by the Nats in this game officially allowed 1 run. We had some defensive mishaps by the Nats. We had some crucial outs on the base paths by the Nats. Coming up later in the show, a special treat, a conversation that the owner and executive producer of this podcast, Tim Shovers, had with Robert K. Fitz, who has written extensively about Japanese baseball. And Robert with Tim will discuss the phenomenon that is Los Angeles Dodgers DH/starting pitcher Shohei Ohtani. Shohei Ohtani is coming to town. No game for the Nats on Thursday, but next up for them, a 6-game homestand beginning with a 3-game series against the 2-time defending World Series champion Los Angeles Dodgers. But Mark, this was quite the loss for the Nats on Wednesday afternoon.
Yeah, I think, Tuesdays was a 1-run loss also, but that one didn't feel that bad. They were kind of trailing the whole way, and I know they put a little spirited run there at the end, and James Wood almost got that last ball over Brandon Marsh's head that might have tied the game. But this one, they were in control, it felt like. When C.J. Abrams hits a 3-run homer and they're up 5-1 in the 7th inning, you're thinking, okay, even if the bullpen isn't perfect, they should be able to navigate this one and get the final 9 outs. Well, that was easier said than done. Some of that goes to just how good the Phillies hitters are. Let's give them some credit for it. Some of it goes to the Nationals defense, which was quite shaky there in the late innings. And I don't know that that directly caused the outcome of the game, but it didn't help matters. But really, I think what it boiled down to was several inexperienced relievers who are going to be thrown into big spots this year just couldn't quite make the pitches they need to when they had to. I think Blake Butera played the matchups as best as he could under the circumstances. He just needed his guys to execute against very good hitters, and they weren't able to do it. There were some walks. They fell behind in the count a few times, and then you saw the end result. And so that was a pretty depressed clubhouse afterwards. Not that they don't always take losses hard, but I think there was a real feeling in there of, hey, they could head home 4-2, winning back-to-back series on the road in Chicago and Philly. I'm not saying 3-3 is bad at all. I think we all would have signed up for that, a week ago. But when you're on the cusp of 4-2, that's a different kind of feeling, a different kind of confidence I think they would have gone home with. And I think that's why this one stung for them.
And if you look at this game, the offense wasn't perfect, but was good enough to win. The starting pitching certainly was good enough to win. Like, this was such a winnable game, and that it ended up being a Nats loss was tough to take. And I tell you, the Phillies tie the game up in the ninth, and you go to extras. And of course, anything can happen. But if you're a Nats fan, you probably were saying to yourself, our team's not winning this game. Like, it just did not feel like that was going to happen. And sure enough, that did not happen. The culprit for this loss was the Nats bullpen, which had not been that bad so far, but 5 Nats relievers in this game combined to allow 5 runs, 4 earned in 3 innings, and nobody really had it. Like, each of the 5 guys struggled to at least some extent. Andre Granillo allowed 1 run in 2/3 of an inning. He, to the first batter he faced, gave up a leadoff homer by JT Realmuto to left center field to cut the Nats lead to 5-2 in the bottom of the 7th. Cianel Perez allowed 1 run in 2/3 of an inning. He gave up a homer. He, in the bottom of the 8th, gave up a leadoff first pitch homer by ex-Nat Bryce Harper to right center field to cut the Nats lead to 5-3. That was some shot by Harper, a projected 425 feet per Statcast. Clayton Beeter officially allowed 1 run in 1 inning. He faced 4 batters and got 3 outs. PJ Poulin was especially bad. He officially allowed 1 run in 1/3 of an inning. He and the Phillies' 2-run ninth faced 3 batters but got just 1 out. He issued 2 walks and a wild pitch. Poulin in this outing, 15 pitches, 6 strikes versus 9 balls. And Cole Henry had a rough time. He officially allowed 1 run unearned in 1/3 of an inning. Henry came into the game, bottom of the 9th, bases loaded, 2 outs, Nats clinging to a 5-3 lead. And Henry, to the first batter he faced, gave up a 2-out, 2-run single by Edmundo Sosa to left field on an 0-2 pitch. And making things worse was left fielder James Wood committing a throwing error. Henry then issued a 2-out walk of Adolis Garcia. And Henry, in the bottom of the 10th, gave up a walk-off first pitch RBI single by Justin Crawford through the right side of the infield for a 6-5 10-inning Nats loss. We're still learning about these relievers. Nats manager Blake Butera, presumably, is still learning about these relievers. Did you have any issues with the reliever deployment in this game? Or by and large, did you think Butera did as he should have done?
I think he managed it the way he needed to under the circumstances. And what that is essentially, if you don't have someone who is a true lockdown closer, then you have to play the matchups to the best of your ability. And so you can say, hey, Beeter had retired 3 of 4 batters. There's 1 out in the 9th. You're still up by 2 runs. Why not just let him try to finish it out? But who's coming up? It's Schwarber and Harper. If you get beat by those 2 lefty sluggers against the right-handed Beeter, who is by no means established yet in the league, and you had another lefty in the bullpen in Poulin who had retired both guys as the opener the night before, I think that's a harder question to answer. I think if you get beat using the guys who make sense from a matchup standpoint, you can live with that. Now, the problem is that Poulin just didn't go after the hitters the way that he did in the first inning on Tuesday night. You fall behind and then walk Schwarber. You fall behind and then walk Alec Boehm, who he probably doesn't want to have to face a right-handed hitter, but because he walks Schwarber, even though he gets Harper, he's still got to face 1 more batter. So now he has to face the righty. Next thing you know, you've got bases loaded, Sosa coming up, and then that's when he goes to Cole Henry. Now, I could maybe quibble with bringing Cole Henry back for the 10th after he'd already blown it in the 9th. That's a tough psychological thing to do. You've already blown the game. You go sit in the dugout. Your teammates didn't score. Now you're coming back out there and say, hey, go strand this runner on second base and extend the game even longer. I could quibble with that, but he's already used at that point 5 relievers. So he's only got 3 left. None of the others are anybody who, you'd say, oh, yeah, that's obviously the guy to go to in that situation. So I understand it. I just think they didn't execute. And I think it really boils down to not throwing strikes and just not trusting that they could get hitters out with their best stuff and maybe trying to be a little too fine with what let's acknowledge are some of the best hitters in the sport that the Phillies have in their lineup.
Yeah, and overall, I still would say Nats pitching in this series was good. I mean, I think Nats pitching in this series, by and large, did a good job. Question, and I ask this not in an accusatory way, but just out of genuine curiosity. Brad Lord, in game 1 of this series, 3 scoreless innings, 3 swinging strikeouts. Was he available for this game?
I believe so, as far as I know. 3 innings, 1 day off. Maybe they don't want to push that, especially with an off day on Thursday. So maybe that is part of it. He would be the next man up, I would think. You're going to use him ahead of, say, a Ken Waldachuk or a Gus Varland. I think those are the only other two that were left. The problem is, of course, especially as you get to extra innings, you don't know how long this game's going to go. And you don't want to burn up everybody, and now you're really running out of pitchers. So I understand this early in the year, not wanting to force that issue. And I think it's always going to be a question. Look, we sometimes saw Davey Martinez ride Kyle Finnegan hard in that first couple weeks of the season, and that may have had lasting impacts over, the weeks and months that followed. I don't know in that moment if Blake Buter is thinking about that, but I'm sure his goal was to avoid using Lord if at all possible. Maybe if the game kept getting extended, he would have gone to him. Again, I don't think it's the end of the world to put Henry back out there. You just wish that it hadn't gotten to that point. I really think it all falls apart when Poulin doesn't do his job against the lefty hitters that he's supposed to get out. Or at least, look, if he comes in and Schwarber hits a 450-foot bomb off him, you live with that. You say, okay, we had the matchup. We went after him. Walking him just really kind of set in motion everything else. It's don't just give it away to him. That's supposed to be your advantageous matchup. Try to actually get him out with your best stuff there.
It was heartbreaking. Poulin off the great work as an opener, struggling in this game on Wednesday afternoon.
Looking for the perfect happy hour to unwind after a long day at work? Look no further than Walter's Indoor-Outdoor Happy Hour, catering to everyone who lives in and around Navy Yard. $5 happy hour options include salmon sliders and house red wine.
Today's show is sponsored by Strawberry.me. Let me ask you something. Do you think championship athletes got to the top by guessing? No, they had coaching. Every elite athlete has a coach watching their form, calling the plays, and spotting the blind spots they can't see themselves. That's how championships are won. So why are you trying to win in your career without a coach? You're grinding, hoping for the promotion, trying to read the politics, guessing your next move. That's amateur hour. If you want to perform like a pro, you need coaching. Strawberry.me matches you with a professional career coach who breaks down your game film. They help you negotiate the raise, navigate workplace politics, and execute a strategy that actually works. Stop riding the bench in your own life. Go to strawberry.me/podcast50 to get 50% off your first coaching session. Strawberry.me, because pros don't guess, they get coached to win.
3 balls, 2 strikes. The pitch to Millis, swinging a little looper center field. It's going to fall in a base hit. Young around 30s coming home to give the Nationals the lead. The throw is cut off behind the mound by Bryce Harper. Drew Millis drives in his second run of the year with a clutch 2-out single to center. Stolen base looming large for Jacob Young, getting into scoring position. The Nationals have the lead for the first time today. It's Washington 2 and Philadelphia 1.
So the Nats offense in this game was pretty good. I mean, it wasn't perfect, but 5 runs, 10 hits, which were a home run, a double, and 8 singles, 4 walks, 2 for 10 with runners in scoring position. The offense certainly was good enough to win this game. The Nats did a good job of driving up the pitch count on the Philly starting pitcher, Christopher Sanchez. Got him out of the game. He allowed 1 run in 5 1/3 innings with 7 strikeouts, but he issued 4 walks and threw 97 pitches. So some good stuff from the Nats offensively. A big home run from C.J. Abrams. That was good to see. Abrams is not off to a particularly impressive start, but he is the Nats starting shortstop and number 6 batter, 1 for 4, 3-run homer and a walk. Also got charged with a throwing error, but Abrams in the Nats 3-run 7th, a 2-out, 3-run homer to right center field for a 5-1 Nats lead. Brady House, he is the Nats starting third baseman and number 3 batter, 2 for 4 with a double, a single, and a walk. Joey Wiemer continues to do as we know Joey Wiemer does, and that's get on base. He is the Nats starting right fielder and number 5 batter, 2 for 4 with 2 singles and a walk. Andy was credited with an outfield assist. But we also had some outs on the base paths by Daylen Lile late in the game. Now, one, I don't know how much you blame him for. The other one is what I think is especially interesting. So Lyle, as the Nats starting DH and cleanup batter, 2 for 4 with 2 singles. He got thrown out in an attempted steal of second base to end the top of the 9th with the Nats holding a 5-3 lead. And I said to myself, and I'm guessing a lot of people listening said to themselves, that could loom large because it felt like, the Phillies lineup, you don't know what's coming. That was an out that the Nats would have preferred not to have experienced, but they had that in that top of the ninth. And then Lyle got doubled off at second base to end the top of the 10th. Now, you asked Blake Butera about that during his postgame session with you guys. I don't know how much you get on Lyle for getting doubled off to end the top of the 10th, but the caught stealing in the ninth inning, that was tough.
Yeah, I agree. The line out, and you heard Butera say it, he's trying to get a good secondary lead because the idea is base hit, he's going to score the go-ahead runs. That's just one of those fluky things that I think you have to live with when it happens. The stolen base attempt, that's one where 2 outs in the ninth, you only go if you're 100% sure. Now, remember Nasim Nunez the night before, 2 outs in the ninth in a 1-run game, and he did with James Wood at the plate. And if he gets thrown out and you leave, in theory, your best hitter standing at the plate as the game ends, that's a really bad look, but he was successful. So you say, okay, well, it was worth it. In this case, it's Joey Wiemer at the plate, who at least through the first week has been their most productive hitter. Is he going to do that again? I don't know. But yeah, I'm not sure it was worth the risk ultimately for that stolen base. Is it going to make that much difference? And I think you'd rather give Wiemer a chance to make contact. The line out, the double play in the 10th, I think that's just one of those things that happens. And it stinks as you see it happening before your eyes, but there's not a lot you can do about that because if somehow he freezes or he goes back and the ball gets through, now he's not going to score and you're going to complain that he got a bad read off the bat. So I think I'd rather in that case be aggressive, thinking you might score the go-ahead run than be, too cautious and go back to second off the bat.
We so far have seen the Nats run some, not a ton. We at times with Davey Martinez as manager in recent seasons, especially with the modified stolen base rules, saw the Nats run quite a bit. With the new process, analytics, etc., do you expect the Nats to run a good bit this season or not as much as we had seen in recent years?
I'm going to think it's not as much as we've seen. I think they're probably more focused on picking the right spots, playing the percentages, knowing who should and who shouldn't go. Now, they have worked a lot with some of these guys on being better base stealers, getting better leads, better jumps, better secondary leads. It's not a stolen base attempt, but, getting a better secondary lead off second base so that you can score on a single, going from first to third or first to home on a double. I think they're prioritizing that, but I don't think you're going to see them run at will the way they did a couple years ago. Jacob Young had a stolen base in this game, his first of the year. That's nice to see. He really wants to improve because he knows that he was not good enough in that category last year. I don't think they're going to be one of the leaders in the majors in stolen bases. I'm just guessing that's not their philosophy with this. But if the guys who are fast can show that they're getting better at putting themselves in a good position, then I think they'll get the green light more, and maybe you'll see some more of that.
And we mentioned the throwing error by James Wood. He did have another rough game at the plate. Starting left fielder, number 1 batter, 0 for 5 with a strikeout. Wood so far in this regular season, OPS just 496. I got to tell you, that error drove me nuts. And not that it cost the Nats a run, but everything is falling apart. And then the cherry on top of the sundae is that horrible overthrow by James Wood in that 9th inning.
Yeah, that felt like the kind of play that you make that throw if that's the winning run, not when it's the tying run. If it's the winning run, hey, you go for broke. You have nothing to lose. And if you airmail it, okay, so be it. But as the tying run, it was going to be tough to throw him out anyways with 2 outs in the 9th. If you're going to do it, keep it low at the very minimum so that it can be knocked down. It did allow the trailing runner to go to third. All of a sudden, the winning run's on third base. Now they got out of it, so it didn't cost them. But I agree, that's a bad look. There's a time and a place for those kinds of things. Know the situation. If it's a last desperate move to try to keep the game going, yes, you do it. But because the game, that was only going to be the tie game, by going for broke like that, he created a situation where they could have lost it right there, because if that ball gets away and bouncing around, there's nobody there to back it up, that's your ball game right there. And that's a terrible way to lose a baseball game.
And the throw wasn't close. I mean, this was what is that? And again, the circumstances, everything is falling apart, and you do that. It's that was the last thing that the Nats needed in that moment, and yet that's exactly what happened. a shame of this 6-5, 10-inning loss at the Phillies on Wednesday afternoon was that the Nats wasted a good outing by starting pitcher Cade Cavalli. 1 run in 6 innings. A nice job by him. Now, he wasn't dominant. He put some guys on base, gave up 5 hits, which were 2 doubles and 3 singles, issued 2 walks and 2 hit by pitches, but recorded 3 strikeouts and navigated his way out of damage for the most part. 84 pitches, 50 strikes, 34 balls. So the run came in the bottom of the first. Cavalli issued a leadoff 5-pitch walk of Trey Turner, gave up a steal of second base by Turner, and then gave up an RBI double by another ex-Nat, Kyle Schwarber, to put the Phillies up 1-0. Now, this was an interesting play. Center fielder Jacob Young on the double failed in an attempt at a diving forward catch, allowing the ball to go all the way to the wall. A bad look for Young, but the Nats ended up getting it out. The Nats threw out Schwarber in his attempt to advance to third base. And in fairness to Jacob Young, so the defensive aggressiveness cost the Nats in that 1-run first for the Phillies, but Young's defensive aggressiveness paid off the following inning. Bottom of the second, bases loaded, 2 outs. Young, a sliding forward catch on a first pitch liner by Trey Turner for the 3rd out. So did want to acknowledge that, but a good outing by Cade Cavalli against this tough Phillies offense. Cavalli on opening day, not necessarily bad, but only lasted for 3 2/3 innings. This game at the Phillies, 1 run in 6 innings.
And I think what was most impressive, he was kind of all over the place early on. If you look at the pitch map of where all his pitches landed, it's like everywhere. He's missing on all sides of the plate. He was doing just enough to be effective. He got some help from his defense, and that Young catch was fantastic given the situation at that moment. But what Cavalli did that I think stood out the most is that he got better as it went on. He retired the last 7 batters that he faced, and those were all Phillies hitters who were facing him for the 3rd time in the game. He got a chance to face 7 of them 3 times, and he retired them all that last time through and did it pretty efficiently so that he gets through the 6th. He's still only at 84 pitches. In theory, they could have sent him back out for the 7th. I don't think we're going to do that this early in the season and given all of his, injury history and all of that. But to get through essentially 3 times through the lineup in 6 innings on 84 pitches and limit it to 1 run, I thought that was a fantastic job and shows you just how good he can be. And I loved to see the way he got better and that his final time through the order was actually his best time through the order.
Yeah, you look at Nats starting pitching here over these first 6 games, right? Jake Irvin, good. Foster Griffin, good. Cade Cavalli, certainly the second time out, good. Like we said, Nats pitching in this series, for the most part, good. The starting pitching, I think it's been pretty decent, if not good so far. Miles Michael has struggled. Some nits to pick with some of the other outings. But overall, this rotation, which we didn't know what to expect from it, you're getting some decent stuff.
Today's show is sponsored by Strawberry.me. Let me ask you something. Do you think championship athletes got to the top by guessing? No, they had coaching. Every elite athlete has a coach watching their form, calling the plays, and spotting the blind spots they can't see themselves. That's how championships are won. So why are you trying to win in your career without a coach? You're grinding, hoping for the promotion, trying to read the politics, guessing your next move. That's amateur hour. If you want to perform like a pro, you need coaching. Strawberry.me matches you with a professional career coach who breaks down your game film. They help you negotiate the raise, navigate workplace politics, and execute a strategy that actually works. Stop riding the bench in your own life. Go to strawberry.me/podcast50 to get 50% off your first coaching session. Strawberry.me, because pros don't guess, they get coached to win.
From the stretch, first pitch. Swinging a line drive, shallow center. On comes Young. He goes into a slide. Did he catch it? Yes, he did. Second base umpire points to the first base umpire. Blakeney says he caught it on a sliding grab. What a catch by Young. Just making sure he got it. He did. Phillies don't have a challenge, and Jacob Young saves a couple of runs with that sliding shoestring catch.
A rather stiff test is coming up this weekend. As mentioned, the 2-time defending World Series champion Dodgers coming to Nationals Park. As at last, we get some Nats home games in this regular season. Game 1, Friday afternoon at 1:05. Game 2, Saturday afternoon at 4:05. Game 3, Sunday afternoon at 1:35. The only starting pitcher who the Nats have announced for this series is Foster Griffin for Game 3. Game 1, the Nats starting pitcher is to be announced. Game 2, the Nats starting pitcher is to be announced. The obvious question is, are we getting openers over these first 2 games of the series from the Nats? To that, you say what?
I think we are going to see an opener in the home opener, Al. I think PJ Poulin, who's been front and center here the last couple of days in Philly, is going to be front and center again in D.C. at least on Friday, and we'll see about Saturday. That may be too much to ask of him 4 times in 5 days. If not him, you're looking at either CNL Perez or Ken Waldichuk, perhaps. Just think about who's at the top of the Dodgers lineup. Ohtani, Betts, Freeman. 2 of them are left-handed hitters, some of the best in the game. The starting pitchers who are lined up for those games are Miles Mikolas and Jake Irvin. 2 right-handers who are known for giving up very long home runs with some regularity. And so that's why I believe it says TBA for both those games. I fully expect Poulin for at least one, if not both of them. And then we'll see the starters come in after them. It essentially worked on Tuesday here against the Phillies. And you hope that it gets the job done against such an imposing lineup. We'll see. It's a little strange. You're going to have your home opener sellout crowd introducing the starting lineup. And today's starting pitcher for the Nationals, PJ Poulin. I think that's who it's going to be. We're going to see more of this. If you're facing an opponent that has good left-handed hitters at the top of the lineup and you're not really sold on your right-handed starter as being effective against them. They're not going to do this with Cade Cavalli, I don't think, because the stuff is good enough and he was actually more successful last year against lefties than righties. But Mikolas and Irvin and perhaps Littell, we'll see how he progresses as he starts to build his arm up more. I think you're going to see this a decent amount. And maybe when it's all said and done, the pitcher who makes the most starts for the Nationals this year will not actually be a member of their rotation. How about that?
I was going to say, you in your media predictions questionnaire should have had who will lead the Nats in starts. And we could have said, hey, a reliever. We could have picked one of these guys, say a PJ Poulin or a Ken Waldichuk to lead the Nats in that category. I mean, we get it. And when you see the Nats announce their starting pitchers for the following series and you get a to be announced, usually that means one of 2 things. I mentioned this on a recent episode, right? It's either someone's coming off an injured list and he just hasn't yet been activated, or it is an opener. And with these analytically inclined teams, often this is what you get. You don't get announced starting pitchers for upcoming games. You get to be announced because they're going with an opener. And we're going to, I think, have to get used to this. This is a new normal for the Washington Nationals. It's also going to be interesting to see what the crowds are this weekend. This could be a monster attendance weekend at Nationals Park. A, the first home series of the season. B, a bona fide box office attraction team in the Dodgers with maybe the single biggest box office attraction star in the sport in Shohei Ohtani. And C, Saturday's game, Japanese Heritage Day. The Nats are taking advantage of having Shohei Ohtani in the ballpark, and so they're playing that card for the Saturday afternoon game at 4:05. So I'm anxious to see what these attendance figures are. I know we're not necessarily expecting robust attendance at Nationals Park this season, although we'll see. But this weekend could be a lot of fun.
You don't think that was just pure coincidence that Japanese Heritage Day is on Saturday with the Dodgers in town? Yeah, they knew what they were doing with that one, because why would you normally hold that for the second game of the season? I think it had a lot to do with the opponent. Yeah, it's going to be packed, not just with fans, but with journalists, because there is a whole horde of Japanese reporters that follow not just Ohtani, but Yamamoto and their Japanese players, and they follow their every move. And so it is going to be packed in the press box. It's going to be packed in the stands. It looks like it's going to be pretty warm this weekend, maybe some bad weather on Sunday. Hopefully everything is fine for Friday. Now, remember, they don't have the off day in between. The off day comes on Thursday. They play Friday. If it rains out, you got to schedule a doubleheader somewhere in there. Sometimes you have that extra off day after the opener to account for that. But in this case, coming off a long road trip to start the year, they're giving them the off day on Thursday, and the Dodgers have to fly east anyways because they've been out west so far. I will be really interested to see how this goes. Opening day is always going to be a big deal. There's going to be a lot of fans there, but there's going to be so much Dodger blue in the stands. I get it. It may be even more pronounced on Saturday and Sunday because maybe there are Nats fans who wanted to come to opening day but aren't as motivated to come back Saturday and Sunday. we're probably going to be hearing a lot about, oh boy, the Nats, can't draw their own fans. They had their ballpark overtaken by Dodger fans. Look, this is everywhere the Dodgers go now. They are the team in baseball, I think more than the Yankees, because of the success they've had, because of the star power they have, and because of the international attention that they get. They get this pretty much everywhere they go. So I don't want to read too much into that. I think the bigger tell about the state of Nationals fandom this year is going to be the following series where you have weeknight games against the Cardinals. Cardinals usually a decent draw, but they're in full rebuild mode now themselves. You're going to have weeknight games in April. The weather maybe not as good. That's usually where you find out what your season ticket base is. And we will see. Can they keep it above 10,000? They've only had one crowd in their history under 10,000. That's the kind of thing I'm watching more so than what we see this weekend when the Dodgers are in town.
And what's the total home attendance for the regular season? I, in your media prediction, said 1.9 million, which is about what the Nats did last season. Is that overly optimistic, or you think 1.9 million will be reached?
I think it's a little high for my taste. I think I went down to 1.7 or maybe low 1.8. I can't remember exactly. I figured just anecdotally what I've heard from a lot of fans, that I think a lot of people were not renewing their season tickets. It's really about season tickets establishes that base number. That's why I said I'm curious to see what they get for those weeknight games against the Cardinals. I will say this, the Nats throughout their history have been remarkably consistent with their attendance. It hasn't fluctuated that much either by the team being good or bad. I think it's a testament to there is a solid fan base that's going to be there through thick and thin. I also think it's testament to, the teams that come into town that are draws, but it's also, I think the team has done a pretty good job of coming up with these marketing ideas of special days that might attract people to the park that otherwise wouldn't care about that particular matchup. I think they've done a good job of that over the years. You wish it was all just based on the baseball, but I think what we've seen over 2 decades is it's not necessarily that much based on the baseball. They're kind of consistently going to be in that between 1.8 and 2.2 million fans. If they're really good and they're playoff contenders, it can move up above that. But even in most of their years in the between 2012 and 19, they were still in that 2.2, 2.3, 2.4 range. It doesn't usually go much more beyond that. I think they've been pretty consistent throughout their history now.
There's also this, and this is a conversation for another day, but MLB in recent years has experienced an overall attendance boom. Business is very good. People are going to games. We don't know if this is causation or correlation, but it more or less coincides with the institution of the pitch clock. But MLB, from an attendance standpoint, is doing well these days. So people are going to games. Very good to see that. You tell us what you think. Hit us up on X at Nats_chat. You can find us on Blue Sky at Nats Chat Podcast. You can email the show, natschatpodcast@gmail.com. All Nationals radio highlights on Nats Chat are courtesy of 106.7 The Fan. So for Mark Zuckerman, I'm Al Galdi. We thank you for listening. We'll talk to you next time on the Nats Chat Podcast. And we leave you now with this conversation that Tim Shovers had with Robert K. Fitz. Robert has written extensively about Japanese baseball, and he's going to talk to Tim about the phenomenon that is Shohei Ohtani.
Now the kick and the pitch. Swing and a long drive to right. Back goes Call. Warning track. He's at the fence and he can't get it. It's in the bullpen and gone. Goodbye. A 2-run homer for Shohei Ohtani.
Honored to be joined by Robert K. Fitz, award-winning author and speaker. Robert is the author of 10 books about Japanese baseball, and I've had the pleasure of reading 2 of them. He recently wrote In the Japanese Ballpark, which is the perfect way to introduce yourself to the Nippon Professional Baseball League in Japan. I bought that one at Politics and Prose on Connecticut Avenue. He also wrote Bonsai Babe Ruth about the Bambino's trip to Japan in 1934, where he played in a handful of exhibition games across the country. Lou Gehrig was also part of that trip. You can literally trace the origin of the connection of Babe Ruth to Shohei Ohtani in this very book. I kid you not. Highly recommend, especially if you are a history buff. Robert, thank you for joining Nats Chat. How are you doing today?
I'm doing well, Tim. Thank you for having me today.
Real pleasure to have you on. Shohei Ohtani is in town with the Dodgers for the Nats' first home series of the year, and I just thought it was a good chance to give our listeners some extra context on just how big Shohei Ohtani is in Japan right now. And of course, he's won the last 2 World Series with the Dodgers. So my first question to you, Robert, is this. In Japan, how big is Shohei Ohtani?
Wow. Do you remember Michael Jordan at the height of his popularity? Yeah, I'll magnify that by about 10. He is huge. You cannot walk around Tokyo without seeing his image every few minutes. He's on the subway cars. He's on the sides of buildings. There's posters everywhere. You go into a shopping mall, and there he is, a big cutout of him trying to sell you a mattress. Then you walk down to the next shop, and he's holding up a bottled tea can. His image is everywhere in Japan. And on the news, in the media, in the sports pages, every morning they talk about on the front page what Shohei has done the day before. Every baseball show at night starts out with what has Shohei done in the Dodgers before they start moving to the other Japanese players and Nippon professional baseball. So he's probably the biggest sports phenomenon to come around in maybe ever, but certainly in many, many years.
And for context for our listeners, how many time zones are in Japan? So kind of set that scene for us.
There's only one time zone in Japan. So that part is easy. Usually it's 12 or 13 hours time difference to the East Coast, depending on daylight savings time.
Dodger Stadium home game, 10:05 on a Tuesday night. What time is that in Tokyo?
Honestly, I have no idea. What I would do is I go to Google. What time is it? But basically, you're looking at the morning hours, right? So if you want to watch Shohei live in Japan, you either have to do it, if you have a job, you have to do it at your desk as quietly as possible, or you have to stay home to watch him.
Are people Shohei fans, or now is everyone a Dodger fan? How does the Dodger fandom work, sort of larger picture?
That is such a good question, because one of the complaints, or maybe we'll say one of the phenomenon that American writers have noticed, is the Japanese fans tend to be the fans of a certain player. So when that player changes teams, they'll change their allegiance. So it's different from, there's Tokyo. Don't get me wrong, I'm talking about MLB fans, Japanese MLB fans. So Shohei's their favorite player. They'll follow him if he gets traded to the Marlins. But the Dodgers have done a wonderful job because they know this. So they got Yamamoto and they have Sasaki. So now they've created this triumvirate of Japanese superstars. So there's more Dodger loyalty than I think any MLB team has ever had in Japan.
When I spent a summer in Europe, I saw Yankee hats everywhere. This is 20 years ago. If I were to walk around Tokyo, how many Dodger hats am I going to see?
You'll see a fair amount. And that's really interesting because in Japan, culturally, sports gear tends not to be worn as a fashion statement. For example, you will not see people walking around Tokyo in Yomiuri Tokyo Giants jerseys. They wear them to the games and maybe to and from the games, but they don't wear them on a day where they're not going to the ballpark. So for people to wear a Dodger cap or a Yankee cap in Japan, that's a little unusual. And so they're really making a statement. It's probably more of a fashion statement than a true loyalty statement, though.
We were coming off the World Baseball Classic. It's once every 3 years. In your perspective, now that you live in America, but you know Japanese baseball so well, how do you think the World Baseball Classic should be set up from a Japanese perspective?
It is awfully tough for the Japanese team to be training in Japan, play the first round in Japan, and then have to fly over for the final games, right? It's a brutal flight. It's, 12, 14-hour flight, and that's not counting airport time on either side. So, basically takes you, 14 hours? It takes you about 20 hours to do the trip. So imagine doing that trip, being completely jet lagged, and then coming in and have to playing some of the most meaningful games of the season, right? That's really tough. So from a Japanese perspective only, it would be great to meet in Hawaii, right? But then that's equally tough on the North American teams, isn't it? So somebody has to travel.
So do you think Dodger Stadium or San Diego should be the site of the finals in light of that instead of Miami?
Yeah, I think it's easier. I think it's easier for everybody because the Latin teams are all in pretty much the same time zone, right? In North America, hour here, hour there. But the only teams that really have to travel far is if somebody from Europe makes it in, or if someone from of course, somebody from Asia will make it in. So the Asian teams have to travel far. So it would be, I think, a better idea to have them on the West Coast.
And then last question for you is, in 5 or 10 years, do you think we're going to have significantly more players in Major League Baseball from Japan as a result of Shohei?
Oh, that's a great question. I hope not. And why I say that is I love Japanese baseball. The Japanese baseball right now is very economically robust. They're actually outdrawing on a per game level the MLB. They're setting record attendance records every single year. So they're doing great, even with their best stars already coming over. What I hope it stays at the same level. So the fans in Japan and foreign fans can enjoy Japanese baseball and keep it at a nice high level. There's still room for the best players to be coming over now and then. And once they hit free agency or once they get posted to come over. So I hope it kind of continues at the same level that it does now.
All right. Thank you so much, Robert. Really appreciate it. Everyone check out robfitz.com. Again, that's robfitz.com. ROBFITTS.com, and check out his wonderful book selection. Thank you so much for coming on, Robert.
Thank you, Tim.
Matt Barnes, first base, center of the rubber, delivers. Swing and a long drive, deep to right, way back and gone. Goodbye. Into the second level at section 240. A long home run for Shohei Ohtani.